Have you ever wondered why the strongest people you know seem to carry the heaviest burdens alone, pushing away the very connections that could lighten their load? The emotional cost of being an avoidant hero explores a painful paradox that millions face every day. These are the people who rescue others, solve every crisis, and appear unshakable on the surface, yet beneath that armor lies a profound loneliness that grows deeper with each act of heroism. Picture someone who has built their entire identity around being the one others can depend on. They're the friend who drops everything when crisis strikes, the family member who handles every emergency, the colleague who takes on impossible projects without complaint. Yet when their own world crumbles, they retreat into isolation, convinced that needing help would somehow diminish their worth. This contradiction isn't just puzzling, it's devastating. The truth about avoidant attachment runs deeper than most people realize. While society celebrates independence and self-reliance, there's a shadow side to these traits that rarely gets discussed. The very qualities that make someone appear strong and capable can become a prison, trapping them in patterns that prevent genuine intimacy and authentic connection. What looks like strength from the outside often masks a deep fear of vulnerability that was learned early in life. Understanding this pattern matters because it affects how relationships unfold, how careers develop, and how personal happiness gets defined. When someone operates from an avoidant attachment style, they often experience what psychologists call the confirmation bias, where they unconsciously seek evidence that proves their belief that relationships are unreliable or burdensome. Every small disappointment becomes proof that depending on others leads to pain, while acts of independence get filed away as evidence of their superiority. But here's what makes this topic crucial for anyone trying to build meaningful relationships or understand their own behavior patterns. The avoidant hero doesn't just impact their own life, they create ripple effects that touch everyone around them. Partners feel shut out and unneeded. Children learn that love comes with conditions. Friends gradually stop reaching out because their offers of support get consistently rejected. The very people who could provide the connection and support that the avoidant hero secretly craves end up feeling pushed away and confused. This isn't about labeling or judging anyone, rather it's about recognizing patterns that might be limiting potential for deeper happiness and more authentic relationships. The goal here is to shine light on behaviors that often operate in the shadows of consciousness, helping both avoidant individuals and those who care about them understand what's really happening beneath the surface. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Now let me tell you about Marcus, a successful architect who seemed to have everything figured out. At 35, he owned a thriving firm, lived in a stunning downtown loft, and had a reputation for being the most reliable person in his social circle. When friends faced relationship troubles, job losses, or family crises, Marcus was always the first person they called. He'd drop his own plans, offer his couch, his connections, or his savings account without hesitation. Everyone called him their rock. But Marcus had a secret that he'd never shared with anyone. Despite being surrounded by people who cared about him, he felt profoundly alone most of the time. When his own challenges arose, like the panic attacks that started after his father's sudden death, or the crushing pressure he felt trying to keep his business afloat during economic uncertainty, Marcus handled everything in complete solitude. He'd researched therapists but never made an appointment. He'd drafted texts asking friends for support but never sent them. The breaking point came during what should have been Marcus's greatest triumph. His firm had just won a prestigious award, and there was going to be a celebration dinner. But that morning, Marcus received news that his biggest client was pulling out of a major project, threatening the financial stability he'd worked years to build. Instead of reaching out to anyone in his network, instead of asking for advice from the business mentors who had guided him before, Marcus called in sick to his own celebration and spent the evening alone in his apartment, convinced that sharing this crisis would somehow make him weak or burdensome. What Marcus didn't realize was that his pattern of giving but never receiving had trained everyone around him to see him as invulnerable. His friends had stopped asking how he was doing because he always deflected with questions about their lives. They'd stopped inviting him to casual hangouts because he only seemed to show up during emergencies. Without meaning to, Marcus had created exactly the kind of distant relationships that confirmed his deepest fear that he was ultimately alone in the world. This story reveals something crucial about the avoidant hero's dilemma. Like Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You, who believes he's protecting the people he cares about by maintaining control and distance, avoidant individuals often convince themselves that their emotional withdrawal is actually a form of love or consideration. They tell themselves they're being strong for others, sparing people from their problems or maintaining their independence. But what's really happening is a sophisticated defense mechanism that keeps genuine intimacy at bay. The most heartbreaking part of Marcus's story was what happened next. When word about his business troubles eventually leaked through professional networks, several of his closest friends felt hurt and confused. They wondered why he hadn't trusted them enough to share what he was going through. Some interpreted his secrecy as arrogance or a lack of faith in their friendship. The very behavior that Marcus thought would protect his relationships actually damaged them, creating the disconnection he'd been trying to avoid all along. Understanding the psychology behind avoidant attachment requires looking at how these patterns typically develop. Most avoidant heroes learned early in life that emotional needs were inconvenient, burdensome, or unsafe to express. Perhaps they had parents who were overwhelmed, critical, or emotionally unavailable. Maybe they grew up in households where crisis was constant and they learned that the way to be valuable was to be helpful rather than needy. These early experiences create what psychologists call an internal working model of relationships, where love feels conditional and vulnerability feels dangerous. The first step toward change involves recognizing that what feels like strength might actually be a limitation. This means paying attention to patterns in relationships and honestly examining whether the desire to always be the helper might be preventing deeper connections. It means noticing when the automatic response to problems is to handle everything alone, even when support is available and appropriate. Start by identifying what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy in emotional terms. Just because someone has invested years in being the strong one doesn't mean they have to continue that pattern forever. The energy that's been put into maintaining emotional walls doesn't become wasted if those walls come down. In fact, the courage and resilience that avoidant individuals have developed can become powerful tools for building the authentic connections they've been avoiding. Begin with small experiments in vulnerability. This doesn't mean oversharing or dumping problems on people inappropriately. Instead, it means allowing friends to see glimpses of the real person behind the helpful facade. When someone asks how things are going, try giving an honest answer occasionally instead of automatically deflecting. When facing a minor challenge, consider asking for input from someone trustworthy before trying to solve everything independently. Practice receiving help with the same grace that's typically shown when giving it. This is often harder than it sounds because accepting support can trigger feelings of guilt, weakness, or indebtedness. But relationships require reciprocity to thrive. When people are never allowed to give back, they eventually feel shut out or unneeded. Learning to receive gracefully actually gives others the gift of feeling valuable and connected. Challenge the cognitive distortions that maintain avoidant patterns. Pay attention to thoughts like, "I don't want to burden anyone," or "they have enough problems of their own," and ask whether these thoughts are actually true or just familiar. Often, the assumption that others can't handle or don't want to know about struggles is based on old programming rather than current reality. Most people feel honored when someone they care about trusts them with their real challenges, set boundaries around caretaking behavior without completely shutting down. This means learning to say no sometimes when others ask for help, not because caring is wrong, but because constantly being in the helper role prevents relationships from developing balance. It also means paying attention to whether helping others has become a way to avoid dealing with personal issues or emotions. Work on developing what psychologists call emotional granularity, which means getting better at identifying and naming specific emotions rather than just feeling fine or stressed. Avoidant individuals often have learned to shut down emotional awareness as a protection mechanism. But emotions provide important information about needs, boundaries, and values. Learning to tune into this internal guidance system is essential for building authentic relationships. Consider that vulnerability might actually be a form of courage rather than weakness. Just like Serena van der Woodsen from Gossip Girl had to learn that her perfectionist facade was keeping people from truly knowing her. Recognizing that showing up authentically in relationships requires tremendous bravery. It takes strength to risk being seen, to ask for help, to admit uncertainty or fear. Reframing vulnerability as a courageous act rather than a dangerous one can help shift the emotional associations around openness. Practice self-compassion when old patterns resurface. Change is rarely linear, especially when it involves patterns that developed early in life as survival mechanisms. There will be times when the instinct to withdraw or handle everything alone feels overwhelming. Instead of judging these moments, treat them as information about what feels scary or threatening, and then gently redirect toward more connected responses. Remember that healthy relationships involve interdependence rather than complete independence or codependence. This means sometimes being the one who gives support and sometimes being the one who receives it. It means sharing both struggles and successes. It means trusting that the people who truly care will want to be part of both the easy and difficult moments of life. The path forward requires courage, patience, and often professional support. But the rewards of learning to connect authentically far outweigh the temporary discomfort of changing familiar patterns. Genuine intimacy, the kind that comes from being truly known and accepted, provides a depth of satisfaction that no amount of independence or control can match. The emotional cost of being an avoidant hero is ultimately paid in the currency of genuine connection and authentic happiness. While these individuals may appear successful and self-sufficient on the surface, they often miss out on the profound joy that comes from being truly seen and valued for who they are, rather than just what they can provide. Like Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris, learning that her relentless optimism and need to fix everything sometimes prevented her from acknowledging her own needs and fears. Avoidant heroes must learn that strength includes the ability to be vulnerable. The journey from avoidant hero to authentic connector isn't about becoming dependent or losing the valuable qualities that make these individuals special. Their capacity for resilience, their problem-solving abilities, and their natural inclination to care for others remain tremendous assets. The goal is to add vulnerability, reciprocity, and emotional honesty to that foundation, creating relationships that are both stable and deeply fulfilling. This transformation benefits not just the avoidant individual, but everyone in their orbit. Partners feel more needed and valued when they're allowed to provide support. Friends develop deeper connections when relationships become more balanced. Children learn that love doesn't have to be earned through perfection, and that asking for help is a normal, healthy part of life. The invitation here isn't to abandon independence or become someone different entirely. Rather, it's to recognize that true strength includes the capacity for interdependence, that genuine love involves both giving and receiving, and that the most authentic version of heroism sometimes means letting others be heroes too. The walls that once provided protection may now be preventing the very connections that could bring the deepest fulfillment. Take one small step today toward more authentic connection. Share something real with someone you trust. Ask for input on a decision you're facing. Accept help that's offered without feeling guilty about it. Notice how it feels to be seen and supported, rather than always being the one doing the seeing and supporting. The world needs people who care deeply and act courageously, but it also needs those same people to experience the profound joy of being cared for in return.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.